Uh, so much has been talked about Ethiopia. It's like we all know the Prime Minister who's here. In Addis, there was a there were a number of great initiatives adopted, including the plan of action financing the SDGs. But one of the things which came out was quite clear that we need to focus on 5 issues globally: peace, prosperity, people, planet, and partnerships. And I took the liberty of converting that into a simple sentence that all of us should be striving for creating peace and prosperity for people and the planet through partnerships. And that's what the Honorable Prime Minister has strived for, actually, and we are so grateful that Ethiopia took the lead in adopting this historic agenda which will drive the investments into the SDGs. I believe that at the end of the day, as all the previous speakers have said, it's about investing in the SDGs. The international community spends about $120 to $150 billion in aid. The requirement for the SDGs has been estimated between 500 and 600 billion a year. Where will that come from? Private sector investment, where we will be able to answer the question, what's in it for me? So that the private sector sees value, so they do well, and they also do good in that process. So, Prime Minister, I warmly welcome you here as you take the lead for the SDGs. Welcome, sir.
Your Excellencies, fellow heads of state, and distinguished participants, I am so glad today standing before you to show our commitment of the African leaders that the African rising narrative is true, and it's a fact that we need to work very closely together. I say this because, you know, it has been a century for the Asians, the last century, and now we are coming up as a continent to show that this is a century for Africa. Africa is rising. Africa has been growing as very fast in economic development, not only in economic development alone, but also in human development. We have a demographic dividend where 70% of our population is a very young, dynamic, which is suitable for investment. Your Excellencies, we recognize that you are not coming for charity. You are coming to make profit. So we have to make the environment for investment conducive in such a way that we have political stability, macroeconomic stability, zero tolerance for corruption, and so that you will be confident to get return out of your investment. In Sustainable Development Goals, we recognized that Africa has responsibility to mobilize its own domestic resources in terms of tax collection and as well as domestic savings. You are coming to support us in our endeavor to move very fast and move very quickly to eradicate poverty by 2030. That's the goal of the sustainable development. So I think this is a time for you to come and invest in our respective countries. We are representing all African, not only our individual countries here, because that narrative is true to all Africans. That doesn't mean that there is no problem in certain areas in Africa where we have to address. We know and understand that peace is very essential for investment to happen. and we are working on peace and stability in some of our countries in Africa, which is essential. And of course, we are handling this with commitment, and we are getting results. So usually, the big international media outlets are portraying that Africa is like those few countries in Africa where there are lack of peace and security. But that's not true. In the majority, Africa is stable, and Africa is moving into democratic course, and Africa is dependable to invest in. So I call upon all of you that we are committed to make the investment environment conducive for you to come and invest in our countries. As my fellow president said, I think the most important thing is that Africa has comparative advantages. And this comparative advantage is that in Asian countries, now the labor cost is soaring, and Africa has cheap labor, where light manufacturing and modernizing agriculture can yield result. So we believe that as we put in our SDGs, economic structural transformation is the agenda of the day in Africa, and we have to move from modernizing our agriculture to value addition and manufacturing. So I think this is high time, and I call upon you to invest in Africa, and specifically in my country, which I represent today, Ethiopia, where the last 10 years, my country has witnessed a double-digit growth of 11% on average, which is remarkable, and we have extricated huge and millions of our population from poverty. And apart from that, we have been working on human capital development, where we have a number of mid-level and high-level professionals being trained, which are conducive for the investment you are pursuing in our countries. Our private sector is also becoming vibrant, so a joint venturing opportunity is huge that you can work with us. So now I would like to say that Africa wants to have a green growth economic development path, which is the future of the globe. And I think we can start in Africa this venture, and the global community can learn from us. Ethiopia has set forth a green growth economic path where we have climate resilient green growth strategy developed that can be implemented together with us. So I think this is an area where we can have smart investment you seek for. So come to Africa, and we invite you to invest with us, and we will give you all the assurances that's necessary for a private sector who wants to prosper together with us. So thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Prime Minister Desalegn. We really appreciate your remarks. I want to read out something which the President of the European Parliament said upon the appointment of the Prime Minister. After meeting with Hailemariam, he said, "I can see his desire to strengthen democracy in the country, allowing for greater pluralism and a freer civil society, to uphold the freedoms enshrined in the Ethiopian constitution," was clear. Thank you, sir.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.